everyone. Welcome to Across the Bifrost, the Mighty Thor podcast, where on each and every episode we explore the world of Marvel's Mighty Thor. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Doze, here on a special assignment because the Fantastic Four movie is coming out very, very soon. Like the return of Galactus to devour the Earth, it is imminent and always on the horizon. Fantastic Four is going to be a great movie. I hope everybody goes and sees it. But because we are a Thor show, we're like, you know what? How can we cross the streams, the narratives of Thor and the Fantastic Four? Thankfully, I have a friend who is more obsessed with the Fantastic Four than I am with Thor. This worked out really, really well for me because my buddy Ross Lawhead agreed to come back and have a conversation about Thor. Ross, fantastic to get to talk to you again, man.
Hello.
So we are on the verge of Fantastic Four, and I asked you a question on Discord, which everyone should go join our Discord community. You can hang out with me and Ross and our whole cast and crew of weirdos. I asked Ross a question. Are there any stories where Thor and the Fantastic Four team up to go solve a problem? And I will let Ross tell you what he told me and what we're going to do a little bit of a retro review for on today's episode. So Ross, what was your response to my team up question?
My response was, I'm not sure, because honestly, there haven't been a lot. I did track down one, and it does have an interesting backstory, and it also ties into a Thor creator, because It's a Walt Simonson written and penciled story, which you just did the full run on the podcast, and that was really good listening. So hopefully, even though Thor is just kind of tenuously in this story, it'll connect, as a kind of an appendix to the Simonson run on the podcast. And so we're looking at Fantastic Four issues 337 to 341 today, and a little bit of history on those is that Walt Simonson was working on the Avengers the year before. He originally conceived this story as an Avengers story. He was going to have Reed and Sue join the Avengers because they were out of the Fantastic Four comic book, and he liked them as characters. But I think it was kind of editorial clashes that led to him kind of dropping the title after just under a year. And he still was good in with Marvel. They still wanted to work with him. And when the Fantastic Four became available, then he wanted to jump onto that. And he repurposed his story. He hadn't written it for the Avengers yet, but there were some plot threads that were set up in the Avengers that he then drew into the Fantastic Four for his first story as writing and illustrating. So that's kind of why Iron Man and Thor are on this adventure with the Fantastic Four. So it kind of answers that question.
Well, so I'm just curious about one little thing, because Walt didn't go right from Thor to Fantastic Four, so Avengers was kind of the stopgap in between those things.
We're talking about the start of the 1990s, in 1990, and what you'll know when the Thor run was that not considerably earlier. So I think he'd been knocking around doing some other things, but Avengers was immediately before Fantastic Four. Okay.
And I knew his run on Avengers was not long, or he didn't have like one of those signature Avengers like runs. And this was also at the time where Avengers was not like the flagship title of the line.
It wasn't, and from what he was saying, the editors were really kind of sticklers for who was doing what in other books as well. So the reason why he couldn't use Reed and Sue was because they were going to put them back in their own title again. And so he was getting kind of annoyed and frustrated with, well, you can use this character, you can't use this character, you can't use all this, this person's doing this over here. So he went into Fantastic Four, and at that time Steve Englehart had been writing it, and he was getting annoyed as well. He was I like Englehart. We did him. We looked at him for the Doctor Strange mini cast that we did. But he had a kind of odd view on the Fantastic Four, which is unconventional, I guess, which is that he didn't like the family aspect of the Fantastic Four. So he thought that Reed and Sue really, in his words, dragged the book down. He had also been playing with having Ben Grimm be in human form, which is why we have him in human form in this book. That's a carryover from his run, as well as Ms. Marvel, or Sheath Thing, I guess is what we'd think of her now, but she was Ms. Marvel at the time. And so I think Walt Simonson was part of an effort by the editorial staff to kind of circle it back to where it kind of began with the core team. And then as Walt Simonson's run went forward, then Ben Grimm did go back to being the Thing, and it was more the original 4 members were kind of center stage and all that. And so this story is a part of that. And I think it was him wanting to kind of make a big mark, because it's a big story that we
very big, yeah.
That includes Celestials and Galactus and time bubbles and stuff. And the idea of the time bubble was from his Avengers work, as well as the Nebula Kang, which is a confusing character for us to think about now, because she is Nebula, but she's kind of possessing Kang, which is not what we think of Nebula as doing.
Not even close.
So I don't know if you got all sorts of questions about that. I had to dig deep for answers on all that.
I love that. I love that this kind of feels like a story where Walt threw the entire book at. He threw the book at the book in a way of saying. So thank you for the backstory, and Walt coming onto this book. So this is relatively early in his run, and we're covering five issues. Broad strokes. Can you tell people what this story is? And maybe how Thor gets dragged along on this wild timey-wimey adventure that sounds it's more Doctor Who than it is anything else.
I would love to be able to. I mean, I feel like Fantastic Four is my my passion, and I want people to enjoy and share in that passion. Yeah. I can't really point to this story as a jumping on point. Really, it's kind of crazy and nutty. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And there is the Reed Richards kind of science spiel going on, but a lot of what they actually seem to do amounts to kind of making something go fast and hit something hard, and then something will happen. That's kind of a theme in these stories. I mean, I don't know where you want to start with this. We could.
Correct me if I'm...
The situation is an interesting one. So basically, Reed Richards has found that there's a time bubble and what he defines as a time bubble is a pocket of time that isn't letting time travelers in or out.
Yes.
So just by its very nature of existing, he's a little bit suspicious about it and wants to investigate what it is. So he's got this thing, which is a time sled, which is kind of... and that's a technology... time travel is a technology we've seen in the Fantastic Four since... issue number 5 with Dr. Doom. So it's he's going back to the roots on that. He's called it Rosebud 2, which, as far as I can tell, is a Citizen Kane reference.
That's what I took it as well.
Yeah. And I kind of like it as a concept. As a setup, it feels like it could be like an MCU movie. It's kind of, we've got a time bubble, we've got Celestials, and we've got Kang, which are we've seen those in the MCU, but then, as I say, it's a little less nuanced after that. There's an attempt to destroy the FF in their headquarters. Reed and Johnny and Ben are having dreams about this blue mysterious woman that's trying to entice them, and Reed goes over to the Avengers and says, "Hey, is anybody around? Does anybody want to come and figure this thing out with us?" And Iron Man they're kind of like, "Yeah, we'll come. Sure, why not?" Yeah. And so they all load up into the sled, and they just make it go really fast and slam it really hard into the time bubble and manage to get through. And I do remember reading this back in... I mean, it wasn't in 1990, but it would have been the mid-90s, and seeing all of the... you get to see all of the other time sleds from all the other parallel universes.
Very
and
cool
that's
art.
Something that I was familiar with at that time. That wasn't kind of a used concept like it is these days. Even sort of before the multiverse of madness kind of really made us sick of the multiverse. I kind of blew my mind, and I'm kind of like, wow, we're reading we're reading the story line, the story universe that succeeds. Everybody else is failing, but we're on the one that is going to make it. And I felt kind of like profound, I don't know, dismay for all the other, like what happened to the other multiverses that didn't make it. So and the time thing is something that Walter will keep using after this story, and he does then involve the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, and we get to see
their own creation in Thor,
nature, which is again ties back into Thor as well. So he's really kind of using the shared universe to its advantage in these stories. But they kind of go through a merry chase that involves Gladiator and
Death's Head.
Death's Head, a British character from Marvel UK. He's just kind of there at some point. Galactus is being used. They find Galactus. He's being used as a part of an engine to create a black hole in the middle of this time bubble, and they find out that the person behind it is the Black Celestial, who, as far as I can tell, is only in this story called the Black Celestial. Elsewhere, he's called Tiamat, or the Dreaming Celestial, and he's the Celestial that's underneath our Earth, and that's who we would have seen in the movie The Eternals, who was coming up out of the Earth as well.
Good connection. Awesome.
Yeah, all the other Celestials are running around, but this is the one that's in Earth, and it's a little bit of a different lore, and it's been reinvented more recently since then. But at the time, he wasn't sort of hatched as an egg. This was kind of his punishment for going against the Celestials, and he's called the Dreaming Celestial because he is dreaming while he's underneath there, and his dreams are kind of giving power to things going on around him. And that doesn't really encroach on this story so much, but that's kind of the setup as it brought us up to this point.
Awesome.
So Walt Simonson is using his own Avengers storyline. He also did a 12-issue Eternals storyline as well. That is just the Eternals limited series. They reference it in issue 340. So he's drawing on that as well. And as well as referencing the trial of Galactus, which is a great story by John Byrne in the John Byrne run in the mid 200s. It's quite famous, where Reed defeats Galactus, but then realizes that he has to save Galactus because Galactus is a force of nature in the universe, and the universe has created him for a reason. And so we can't destroy that. We have to preserve it. He's kind of going against type in this one because he's trying to destroy Galactus and the Celestials and everything, because he gets mad because he thinks Sue has been murdered by the Celestial, and he kind of goes off in a fit of rage. Ben cold clocks him and carries him off, and this is why it's kind of unsatisfying to me, is that the characters are doing a Fantastic Four, but they're not acting like the Fantastic Four very much. It's not really kind of Reed's not. He's being too passionate, and Ben's not the thing anymore, which I guess you can say, that's a good thing to do for writers, is to kind of play them against their type. But at the same time, it just kind of feels like it's not really holding together for me. I don't know what you felt going into it as well.
So you're right. We just did that long retrospective with Walt, and that was a really immersive experience because we got to see his version of Thor, and now being dropped into his version of the Fantastic Four. I was like, it's interesting how Reed does talk when the Black Celestial is brought into the story. He had just told Johnny, by the way, man, we don't kill people. And then Sue is like, didn't you just tell Johnny we don't kill people? He's like, whatever, Sue, I'll apologize to him later. I'm like, hold on, you're an asshole. You're doing the thing you just told Johnny not to do. Meanwhile, Johnny is possessed by the spirit of Nebula, and which is hilarious because Johnny is just constantly checking out Gladiator throughout 2 issues.
Right. Yeah.
But it's the mind of Nebula inside of Johnny.
Yeah,
it's so freaking ridiculous. And Thor is just in the back seat of the time sled. Yeah. And every so often Reed's like, Thor, do the hammer thing. And he's like, forsooth. And he's just like, And then Iron Man has even less to do in this story. Actually, this comic should really be called the Fantastic Four and Thor, kind of Iron Man, but mostly Gladiator. Go fight Galactus, because I think it's in the third issue, where we see Gladiator gives them permission to use all the munitions from the Shi'ar Empire in this time in the future. I think it's 30 years in the future when they're going to this time bubble to stop Galactus from consuming the universe. Typical Marvel cosmic stuff. And Gladiator is like, okay, we can use all the munitions. And someone brings up the thing of like, but the Shi'ar Empire will be defenseless if we use all the munitions. And he's like, there may not be a Shi'ar Empire if we don't use all these things. So it's so much of the issue. They're like, they spent days and fortnights, piling all these munitions. And then when they get to go launch the attack on Galactus, the Black Celestial shows up and basically just hand waves all of it. And they're like, well, damn it. And the artwork is phenomenal in those pages where it's very like Independence Day with all the ships out in the space starfield. The art was fantastic, and I believe this is Walt doing all five issues. But it was the artwork was fantastic. There are some nice
experimental touches as well. Like you have kind of a computer background for when the computer is talking to itself. There's one where they're talking in the darkness basically. It's just kind of a page of black with the on it. That didn't represent very well in the Marvel, the Fantastic Visionaries collection that I've got. In the actual newsstand issues, that was kind of one page, and you kind of saw the black kind of like eclipsing the page as it went on. So it was a double page spread.
That's great.
And Simonson has said that he's a little bit annoyed with some of the collected works. There's at the end they use the ultimate nullifier, which again is a thing that's probably best not used.
It's the ultimate Deus Ex Machina.
Exactly, yeah, and it's kind of, well, we're going to use it, but some collections didn't include the whiteout page. There's supposed to be an entire page of blank, and then the thread comes through. But I think online they've changed that, and it looks like the Visionaries thing they've changed that as well. So. It's all, the art is great, and it's just the scale of what Walt can do, with the big machine and the towering figures, and you really do get a sense that Galactus is big, but then the Celestial is even bigger than that, and he doesn't seem to lose you too much in the scene, and just the craft work is so impressive with Walt always.
There's a lot of his, and I felt this during when we were doing a deep dive on his Thor run. But his attention to detail is so Kirby-esque that like he can make you feel this grandeur, and you're actually just looking at an 8x10 piece of paper. The panel where the Black Celestial shows up, I believe it's in issue 4 or 5, and one of the first panels when the Black Celestial shows up, and all the spaceships are in the background. And the Celestial has his hand out, and like the little time sled is like an itty bitty dot. And I'm just like, that is, to me, that's a Kirby thing where you create scope with that perspective, and you get this like, oh my gosh, like it's a great example of how the comic book medium is really special in that, where that's not a CGI, that's a pen, a paper, and a colorist that are all just firing on all cylinders. So like, where the story might lose you, the art will get you back, because Simonson is a master at creating the scope.
And I will say as well that the Simonson run is a great run. Like, it does improve after this. And Fantastic Four 351 is one of my favorite issues. There's kind of two parallel stories going on. Reed is going back and forth in the story that you're reading on the left-hand side. You're seeing him on the right-hand side. And so at the bottom of his storyline, he'll say, turn to page 17 to see the rest of this story. And then, on that page, turn to page 5 to see the rest of this one. So you have to read it twice, basically. You can read it chronologically, but read it make sense until you read that separately. So he uses a lot of invention, and you can see him kind of playing around with, what are the boundaries of what I've been given here, and he has landed on, taking a lot of it back to Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and he's made. Did you catch some of the references within the story itself to Lee and Kirby?
Oh yeah, like the Kurtzberg drive. I was like, oh, someone was feeling themselves when they wrote this. Someone was like, aha, the real ones will know. That was great. The Kurtzberg drive was fantastic. I loved that reference so much.
So it's getting there, but as I say, this I come to me for other jumping on points for Fantastic Four, but I mean for continuing, if you're Walt Simonson completist, then do not skimp on the Fantastic Four. It gets a lot better after this.
Would you say, Ross, like next to his Thor run, that Fantastic Four is maybe the other strongest run he had on a title at Marvel?
Yeah, I'd say so. Although I was actually unaware of his Eternals limited series, so I want to check that out.
Okay. I'm all for I'm all for reading Eternal stuff. And I already know I like Simonson. I think when I read Simonson, I do get a Kirby vibe from him because I know he cares so much about like when Simonson does Asgard, I know he's a nerd about Asgard, like Kirby was a nerd about Asgard. So they may have different, obviously they're different men, they're different creators, different times, but they have that same like care and compassion for the subject matter. So I'd be really interested to see what his Eternals feels like. That is an interesting suggestion. And for the record, everybody, if you want more of Ross talking about the FF, Ross, you actually have a way people can do that, and I'll share the Substack link. But can you just tell people where they can find your breakdown of Fantastic Four comics?
Yeah, so I had a rather popular blog back when blogs were young and podcasts were not born yet, but it was called FF 1 by 1. And so it's basically just going through and doing a review of every Fantastic Four comic book in sequence, starting with number 1, and just taking them on their own merits. So with this, I've brought in a lot of background, but usually I just kind of look at the story. What's the story say about itself and the characters in it without a lot of without too much context, just enough to kind of put it off the right footing. But I'm migrating it now to Substack, and so those are all hitting pretty fast at the moment. And we'll get through all of them eventually. But I'm having great fun doing that.
You're up in the 30s now, right?
I'm at 30s now. I've got a backlog up to 206.
But on the Substack feed, you've gotten it. You're in that 30s kind of, so like the FF.
So it's a good jumping on point. There's not too much to catch up on if you want to read along with those ones.
And they're quick reads, like 2-3 minutes. And Ross is also a great writer, everybody. So it's not like it's just like 2 sentences like, this comic was dumb. Like expert analysis, everybody. Like, no, it's really good. I'll include a link here in the episode description so you can go check it out. If you already have a Substack membership, it's just like a click and you're already ready to go. And I think there's a setting where you can have them like delivered to your email, or you can check on the app. Real convenient. Substack is great for a lot of different things. And before we leave this part of the conversation, Ross, before we leave this story specifically, did you have a favorite part of the story? Or maybe something that you did in your research that you feel like we can't leave the topic until we've talked about blank.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you said that because I was trying to figure out how to work this back in.
Yeah. No, you got it.
This is more kind of this is something that's just a weird curio I found on my travels in the deep dive into this. Is that Walt Simonson says that he based Sue Richards' look on a Playboy model who was married to Hugh Hefner. He said they were engaged around that time. He didn't give the name, but as far as I can tell, it was based on Kimberly Conrad. So you can go back and look at those references. And apparently she was, very striking and beautiful, but had a certain edge that he liked for Sue. So he doesn't say that he's a good likenesses for a person, but he just, wanted to take that kind of, characteristic and apply it to his images of Sue. So
you say Kimberly Conrad?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sure the Merry Marvelites listening to this will Google enthusiastically, given the given the description you gave. I just wanted to say one last thing before we put a pin on this part of our conversation, because we are going to do more with Ross, including Thor and the FF, kind of centered around the movie coming out. Reading this comic and Thor kind of being the backup, really, Thor playing support is not something we see a lot. He was the transportation, and we don't really see Thor play that role a lot. So that was kind of nice to see him in a different role on the team, as opposed to just being the power guy. But speaking of the power aspects, I need to find and I need to see more of Thor versus Gladiator, because Thor Gladiator is a great fight. Like, Gladiator is such a cool, unique look, kind of a fun alien twist on the Superman, the Marvel Superman kind of motif. But I need to find more Thor versus Gladiator, Ross. I must. It is my task now for the weekend. Ross, thank you for suggesting these comics. Everybody, if you're a Walt Simonson completist, if you're a Thor sicko, if you want to see the FF, like kind of be the FF, this might be a comic to check out. But either way, we hope you enjoyed this conversation. We are going to do more with Ross. So if you enjoyed the Thor Fantastic Four crossover stuff, just you wait. But while you're waiting, whether you are entering into different times and you have assembled a group of your friends to help you solve a problem, whether like Johnny, there are mysterious voices in your head that you really don't know what to do with, whether you're Ben Grimm and you just don't feel like you're really yourself, these days. And people kind of wish you'd get back to the status quo. No matter what, just remember to do one thing, and that is to stay worthy.